If I flip a coin, could you tell me what side the coin would land on before I'd flipped it? Well, all of us would say the answer is no, because the side the coin lands on is completely random. Okay, how about if I'd already tossed the coin, but it was still mid-air? Is it still random? When does the coin flip become not random anymore? The definition of randomness in the Oxford Dictionary states that it is the quality or state of lacking a pattern or principle of organisation. To understand this, we need to first take a look at the philosophy of science. The basic premise of science is to have a hypothesis on a particular aspect of nature, perform experiments to see if this hypothesis is quote-unquote true, and in turn form a conclusion. The validity of a hypothesis involves seeing if there is a repeated observation that can be continually tried and tested. If the repeated observations you see are aligned with your hypothesis, you can confirm your hypothesis to be an accurate representation of reality. This process is how scientific knowledge has been accumulated for thousands of years, taking the human species from being hunter-gatherers to exploring Mars. So within this framework, where does randomness come into the equation? Randomness is the lack of explanation of such a repeated pattern, something science cannot explain yet. If we cannot find a hypothesis consistent with the repeated observations we see, this can be attributed to randomness. Randomness is merely a reflection of our ignorance. Now, let's take this back to coin flipping. Imagine we knew everything there is to know about the universe. All the laws of physics, the gravity acting on the coin, the wind resistance affecting the coin's path, the amount of friction between the coin and my fingers, etc. With all this information, it makes sense that as soon as the coin leaves my hand, the side the coin lands on can be calculated and hence is not random. The coin being free from my hand means its path is now completely determined by the laws of physics and nature. Its destiny is decided. Okay, so this is a lot of armchair philosophy, but let's bring this back to us. What if we as humans are just like coins that are mid-air waiting for our destiny to unfold? What if every thought we had is just nature taking its course? I mean, every thought we have is just a chemical reaction, which was caused by a prior chemical reaction, etc. This flow of nature cannot be influenced by quote-unquote us. Think about the decision you've made to watch this very video. Firstly, well done, and stick around. Secondly, that was caused by chemical signals in your brain to make you do this, which you had no control over, but you feel like you consciously made this decision. Pretty scary, right? This has obvious adverse consequences on your outlook on life. If we really don't have free will, why don't we just stop trying? It's all predetermined. Nothing matters because everything that will happen was already going to happen. This seems like a pretty dark outlook on life. But thankfully, this is not the end of the story. During our lives, it seems so abundantly clear that we have such a strong sense of freedom of choice and thought. When you clicked on this video, you chose to do it. You could have not clicked on this video, but you chose to. This feeling is obviously contradictory to the argument laid out previously, but it is still a huge factor we cannot ignore.
The thing that I'm making the argument for is that you cannot get from a materialist Darwinist universe to free will. That is not possible. So I know that the way you solve that is that you say that there is no free will.
That's right.
And what I'm saying to you is you don't act that way.
I hear this all the time. People say, look, you may say there's no free will, but you don't act as though that's the case. I suppose that I'm just confused as to what it would look like for somebody to act as if they believe there was no free will. I mean, the very argument that there is no free will that I subscribe to, at least one of the various forms that it takes, is a sort of Schopenhauerian view that you can do as you will, you just can't will what you will. And that you are essentially just a biological machine reacting to its internal and evolutionary drives. That's what's happening. Now, call that nihilistic if you like, that's a separate question, but as to the question of how this would make one act, the idea that this might cause us to sort of lay around in bed all day or something, the very mechanism that I think is responsible for eliminating the possibility of free will, that is, the drives that make people do what they do, like I say, do exactly that. make people do what they do. They make them get out of bed in the morning. Why do you get out of bed and go and make your breakfast if there's no free will? So you go and get breakfast because there's no free will and something is driving you to do that that's outside of your control.
For sure. So to get back to the nihilism point, which you kind of put aside, so that means that this conversation is essentially worthless in any sort of real sense. I mean, effectively, we were driven here by evolutionary biology and environment to have this conversation. Everybody who's watching this is driven by evolutionary biology and environment to have a particular reaction to that thing, and ever round the cycle goes. That seems like a very purposeless life. Maybe again, I'm drawing from a realm that is not evolutionarily, biologically.
Even though the argument for no free will is pretty ironclad and is virtually accepted by all philosophers, live as though you are free, because nothing good can come from not believing you have no accountability or ownership. This ties into the idea of God and spirituality, because a higher power doesn't make too much sense, as you have no moral agency to act in a quote-unquote godly manner. The script is already written, so we just have to try and live the best lives we can. However, the second way to see this is that the seeming contradiction of there being no free will doesn't make any sense with the human experience. Something must explain this contradiction. Hindu philosophy suggests that consciousness is not material and is not part of the chain of causes and effects explained earlier. This is our real self, an identity that is able to make decisions. Also, the contradiction can make believing in God easier, as it must mean that there is a higher power to be able to create this contradictory experience. In the Bhakti traditions within Hinduism, it is believed that God or Bhagavan has endowed everyone with free will to be able to have a loving relationship with him. A truly loving relationship requires both sides to willingly want to serve each other. This can only happen if both freely choose to do this. We have free will to engage in material worldly pleasures void of God, but the fruitful relationship we can have with Bhagavan can only be manifested when we choose to let go of our material desires and choose God. That is true love. So, in conclusion, no matter which side of the argument you may lie on, start to take more control of your life. Be more conscious when making decisions. Be more mindful and use more of your free will. Live your life and don't let life live you. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, share and comment. Take care.